And that's yet another DDG win.
Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the Dead Draw Gaming YouTube channel. This is Smart TCG, and today I'm going to be going over the results from this previous Portland Regional Championships that just happened this past weekend. We saw Arceus Giratina win the tournament, and today we're going to be going over some of the interesting lists that performed really well. With that being said, thank you so much for all the support on the channel. Recently, we've been really trying to bring out the best competitive content possible to help you all improve at the Pokemon trading card game. With that being said, I was able to place in day 2, top 128 at this tournament as well, so I'll kind of go over my list as well as also some of the other decks that did really well at the tournament. So starting off here, we have Landon Caitler's deck. Arceus Giratina V-Star was able to win this tournament, taking down over 1,000 players here with a pretty interesting list. You guys might have seen him using the Scovet to be able to save himself multiple times on stream, especially in the top 4 match, I believe, I think it was, versus Grant Manley there with that Nest Stash Scovet, being able to do really well here. Once in your turn, you may shuffle your hand and put at the bottom of your deck. If you do put any cards in the bottom of your deck, you get to draw a card, which is pretty good. So that was kind of the card that carried him throughout the tournament, especially in that top cut as well. Really good card here. Arceus Giratina, pretty solid deck. Not a whole lot to say about it, using that Judge Path combination turn after turn to be able to disrupt them, and then you have a really strong attacker in Giratina V-Star, being able to do 280 damage, really strong. You typically don't use Star Requiem, however, there might be some situations where if you were to use something like Abyss Seeking multiple times, you might be able to pull it up, but that typically isn't necessary. 2 Trekking Shoes, pretty interesting there. Cut down from 4. I know some lists have been playing 4, however, looks like they decided to just go with 2. I think that's acceptable because you have cards like Cleansing Gloves, which allow you to do 310 damage to cards like Gardevoir EX. I think this is pretty much why this is in here. Really good card in the Guardy matchup. So yeah, that's the list. Did pretty well. Congratulations to Landon for placing so well at this tournament. We have Reagan Retzloff here, who also performed really well. Reagan, one of the best players in the world currently, performing consistently at tournament after tournament. Just got second at the Oceania International Championships back in February, so definitely has been on a hot run here with particularly Lugia V-Star. Lugia V-Star, one of the best decks in the format still. It looks like they decided to play the Single Strike Urshifu. Now, the reason behind Single Strike Urshifu as opposed to something like Duraludon is this. Since back in the day, or not necessarily back in the day, but at EUIC, which was about a month ago, everyone was playing just the vanilla Lugia V-Star with the Single Strike package. No Urshifu, no Duraludon, just Yveltal and Stonejourner. So that allowed for the Duraludon variant to perform exceptionally well. And the reason is because Lugia didn't necessarily have any outs to stopping the Duraludon VMAX. However, now we see Single Strike Urshifu doing well, which pretty much invalidates Duraludon VMAX's his existence, because Urshifu is just a better attacker. Because if they play Duraludon, you're favored because you one-shot through the Duraludon and they can't one-shot you, so that pretty much invalidates the whole Duraludon strategy. On top of it, it's really good as well versus Goodra, so it pretty much does everything that Duraludon needs it to do, and then it also is just better in mirror because it can one-shot and they can't one-shot you back. So those are a couple reasons as to why this variant is definitely seeing more play now, and why I think this list should keep Urshifu in it. Was really interesting to see no Stonejourner or Thornton in the deck. Those are 2 cards that I definitely like. I personally prefer 1 Tyranitar, 1 Thornton, but I can understand as to why there was just the 2 Tyranitar in the list. But overall, really strong list. Congrats to Reagan, once again performing really well. We also see Grant Manley performing well with the Lost Zone Toolbox with the one of Kyogre. Not a whole lot to say here, however, Lost Zone Toolbox continues to do well, and it looks like Kyogre is proving itself to be a really strong card right now, because not a lot of decks are playing Manaphy. The only decks that are really playing Manaphy are Gardevoir decks and also the Lost Zone box variants. Most of the other decks aren't actually playing Manaphy as of right now, so leave some nice room for that to do well, specifically the Kyogre. We saw Andy Gantner as well do well. Shout out to Andrew getting that first deep run at a tournament that I know that he's been looking for quite some time. So shout out to Andy, a really talented player. I know he's a first-year master and has done exceptionally well, so shout out to them. With this interesting Turbo Lost Zone box list, they have, instead of heavier Nest Ball count, they have double Ultra Ball, just so they can get, I guess, things like Lumineon down quicker, or Dragonite, Raikou, some of that. It's technically just the same as for Nest Ball. However, you have the option to get the Luminion, which is pretty cool. So you can attempt to hit those turn 1. So I guess that's kind of the reason as to why that's there. But not a whole lot else to say about the list here. There is no Kyogre. It's just mainly just pure Turbo. So yeah, pretty interesting there. We see Alex Szymanski here playing the Galarian Moltres, the Kyogre build. This is the build that Nicholas Moffat, very similar list, took to a top 16 place at the European International Championships about a month ago. And I know that Alex said that they took a pretty much base list from Nick and then made a couple changes to it. So yeah, shout out to Alex, doing exceptionally well there. Then we see Austin is the only Mew that made top 8. One of the few Mews that actually did really well, and it just seems like a pretty similar list to the list that Pablo Meza, Tablewan, used to get top 4 at UIC, except there is a Cleansing Gloves in here, and also a Penny. So really trying to focus in on that Lost Zone toolbox matchup, trying to make sure that you have as best of a matchup as possible against a matchup that in the past used to be known as a pretty difficult one. So shout out to Austin making Mew VMAX work again. Mew is always one of my favorite decks, so happy to see the deck perform so well. We do have Anthony Perez getting top 8 here with Miraidon. Definitely was a surprise and a sight to see Miraidon do so well. And looks like they did decide to go with the Flaffy variant. Instead of playing something like the Regieleki, they decided to play Flaffy instead and just use Raichu as the way to take big hit KOs. I also got Magnezone as well with that Electro Star. This is a great attack versus Lost Zone Toolbox and Gardevoir. If they're not able to get set up very quickly, you can simply run them over with Electro Star, wiping off important Pokemon on the bench. On top of this, if they bench Manaphy down, you can use Boss's Orders specifically versus Lost Box, which forces them to waste Clara to be able to get it back, which means that they're not going to be able to use Colress's Experiment. On top of this, Magnetic Grip is also a really, really good attack. Being able to search your deck for 2 item cards, revealing them, and putting them into your hand is definitely very strong. Then you shuffle your deck. So 180, 3 energy, pretty good. Rest of the list here, pretty standard, aside from the Arvums and I guess the Serena. This is mainly going to be a Serena-based deck because you do want to have that Gust effect every single turn. On top of also being able to draw cards is just good in general. And Research sometimes gets rid of too many cards because you're forced to discard your entire hand. Whereas Serena, you get the options on what to discard, and that's important. Arvum as well, really, really good. Being able to get your Seal Stones along with things like the EXP share and an item feels really, really good. So Miraidon getting top 8. Pretty cool to see it. Once again, congratulations. We have another spicy deck that got top 8. Nathan Stratford able to perform super well with the Arceus Duraludon Umbreon VMAX deck. Basically, strategy is to get a little bit of damage on the field. You can use things like Radiant Alakazam to move it around with stuff like Hawlucha, which makes your Trinity Nova on turn 2 even more powerful. You got Duraludon, which just gives you free matchups versus certain decks, and then Umbreon is great versus decks like Gardevoir and Mew, being able to rush those Ralts and Curlias into the active and take them out. With that, Umbreon is really, really good. Boss's Orders also still in the deck, though, just to have some control. Volo, great to be able to remove a bench to V Pokemon. Really, really strong versus those Lost Zone Toolbox decks. So, shout out to Nathan for doing so well at the tournament. Moving throughout some of the other lists here, we see one Gardevoir made top 16. Gardevoir really struggled. Evan Lubley was able to, I think I said that right, my apologies if I didn't, was able to do well with a pretty standard Gardevoir list. Not necessarily a whole lot here. This pretty much seems like towards the list that they used to get second place at EUIC. Standard solid deck, not a whole lot necessarily needs to be said. Really, really strong deck. Moving throughout some of the other lists here, we see Hunter Butler got top 16 with the Kyogre Zamazenta build that Hunter Butler, Michael Perez, and Finnegan Lynch played all to this tournament. Looks like Hunter was able to do really, really well with that version and get top 16. DDG teammate as well. Shout out to Hunter for getting top 16. We saw Azul here get top 32 with the same or very similar list. I think it was like 1 or 2 cards different compared to Grant's list. We do see a couple Mew here, which were able to do well. Looks like multiple Mew in top 32, but not a whole lot in top 16 or better. And then moving throughout some of the other lists, we see a couple Gardevoirs. We see Gardevoir Mewtwo there. Bunch of Lost Box. Another Miraidon almost made it into top 32. We saw Gustavo Sanchez get top 30 or top 64 with Turbo Darkrai. This was spicy for sure. Definitely is an interesting deck right now, and I think it's better than some people give it credit for. So shout out to them for doing so well with Turbo Darkrai. And yeah, not necessarily a whole lot else to talk about. The big thing was Goodra just did absolutely terrible. That's kind of something that was surprising. Highest placing Goodra list was Jacob Newton, top 32, I believe. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't look like necessarily they did super well. And yeah, just kind of scrolling down here, nothing else particularly too exciting. We saw Fusion Mew do well. There was a couple, I think, in 64. We saw Kyurem. I got top 128. Kind of had a rough day too, but this is the list that I ended up playing. It was pretty good. Definitely enjoyed it. and thought it was better than the result that I got with it. But yeah, no, it was pretty strong. Can't complain, had a fun time with it. But yeah, no, that's kind of some of the interesting things that happened here at the tournament. Thank you so much for all the support as always on the channel. If you have any questions about the deck lists and stuff like that, feel free to ask. Also, this link will be in the description as well, so make sure to go check that out. But with that being said, thank you so much for all the support as always on the channel. If you enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Congratulations to everyone that performed well at the Portland Regional Championships, especially Landon Caitler for getting first place. And I think that was his first Masters Regional win. So shout out to them getting that well-deserved W, and also all of the other people who performed so exceptionally well at, I think, the biggest West Coast event of all time. So with that being said, that's going to do it for me today. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Let me know what you think as well. And with that being said, this is Smart TCG from the Dead Draw Gaming YouTube channel. I'll speak with you again soon. Peace out, everyone. Thank you so much.